Sharpe's Escape by Bernard Cornwell. Read by Paul McGann. Mr. Sharpe was in a bad mood. "I see your uniform's been mended, sir," Sergeant Harper said cheerily. Sharpe marched on, climbing the bare Portuguese slope under the searing sun. It was September 1810, yet the heat of late summer hammered the landscape like a furnace. At the top of the hill a stone barn stood next to a telegraph station, a timber scaffolding supporting a high mast from which the signalling arm hung motionless in the afternoon's heat. "It's a rare nice piece of stitching on that jacket. It looks like a woman's work, so it does." "Was it someone you met in Lisbon now?" Harper persisted. Sharpe's uniform jacket was green. He was a rifleman, one of the elite. But the tides of war had stranded him and his men in a redcoat regiment, and now he commanded the light company of the South Essex, who were following him up the hill. Most wore the red jackets of the British infantry, but a handful, like Sergeant Harper, still kept their old green jackets and fought with the rifle. "So who was she?" Harper asked. "Sergeant Harper." Sharpe is finally goaded into speaking. "If you want bloody trouble, then keep bloody talking." "Yes, sir," Harper said, grinning. He was an Ulsterman, a Catholic, and a sergeant, and as such he was not supposed to be friends with an Englishman, a heathen, and an officer, but he was. Sharpe stepped aside from the path and stared back down the column of 54 rank and file, seeking out Lieutenant Slingsby. That was the cause of his foul mood. Lieutenant bloody Cornelius bloody Slingsby. Sharpe walked back down the company to where Lieutenant Slingsby brought up the rear guard. "No stragglers, Sharpe," Slingsby said with the eagerness of a terrier. He was a short man, bristling with efficiency. "Mr. Iliffe and I coaxed them on." Everything about the man annoyed Sharpe. The back of the man's head, which was as flat as a shovel, his protuberant eyes, his black moustache, the broken veins on his nose, the snort of his laughter, the strut of his gait. Sharpe had come back from leave to discover that Slingsby had replaced his lieutenant, the reliable Robert Knowles, who had been appointed adjutant to the regiment. "Cornelius is a relation," Lieutenant Colonel the Honourable William Lawford had told Sharpe. "A very fine fellow, joined the army late, which is why he's still a lieutenant. Well, he was breveted captain, of course." "I joined the army early, sir," Sharpe had said, "and I'm still a lieutenant. Breveted captain, of course." "Oh, Sharpe," Lawford had sounded exasperated. "There is no one more cognizant of your virtues than I." Sharpe had been made into a lieutenant, and that was something of a miracle for a man who had joined the army as an illiterate private. And he'd been breveted a captain, which meant he was paid as such, even though his true rank remained lieutenant. But he could only get the real promotion if he either purchased a vacant captaincy or, much less likely, was promoted by Lawford. "I value you, Sharpe," the colonel had continued, "but I also have hopes for Cornelius. He's 31, keen as mustard, Sharpe, and has experience." Before joining the South Essex, Slingsby had been in the 55th Regiment in the West Indies. The yellow fever had decimated its officers, so Slingsby had been breveted a captain of the 55th Light Company, and as a result, reckoned he knew as much about soldiering as Sharpe, which might have been true, but he did not know as much about fighting. "I want you to take him under your wing," the colonel had finished. "Bring him on, Sharpe, eh?" Bring him to an early grave, Sharpe had thought sourly. Slingsby pointed up to the telegraph station. "Mr. Iliffe and I saw men up there, Sharpe, and one was wearing a blue uniform." Sharpe had noticed the men and their horses 15 minutes earlier, and he'd been wondering what the strangers were doing on the hilltop. For officially the telegraph station had been abandoned. The French had already cut the chain further north, and the British had retreated away from these hills. Somehow this station had not been destroyed, and Sharpe's company had been given the job of burning it. "Could it be a Frenchman?" Slingsby asked. He sounded eager, as if he wanted to charge uphill. "Doesn't matter if it is a bloody crapo," Sharpe said, sourly. "There's more of us than there are of them. Sergeant Harper, march on." It took another half hour to reach the hilltop. The barn was evidently a shrine.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?